أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shia Imamiyyah Doctrine. I don't know exactly what session this is, maybe the 36th or 37th. We took last week off, and alhamdulillah this week we are starting up again. We left off on last time we went through articles 108 and 109. Yeah. So I'm going to go through those real quick just to go over what we had, and then we'll move on to today's topic. 108, 109, and 110 actually. So 108 was about the questioning of the grave. As those of you who've been following, if you remember, we moved into the life after death part of this book, and we are now making our way through the barzakh, or last week we went through the barzakh, and then we move on to Yawm al-Qiyamah. So the only thing that he covered, if you remember last time, about regarding the barzakh was the questioning of the grave. He didn't go really too much into detail. He talked about how this is something that all schools of thought they agree on, and it's not to be doubted. He brought some quotes from different ulama and scholars of the Shi'i school of thought, and he also says in the end that this is something that when you look in the Sunni schools of thought also, you find that they also believe in this questioning of the grave, which the details of it he didn't get into, so we're not going to get into either. Those of you who have attended this Death and Barzakh course that we offer, you know very well the different things that we talk about in that regard. For example, how the questioning is, and whether or not a person can just memorize the answers to those questions and get them right in the grave, and so on and so forth. There's a lot going on there. Article 109, he starts talking about reincarnation. And as I said before, reincarnation and the discussion on reincarnation, it requires a lot more than what is covered here. You really need a good grasp of philosophy, maybe even, to figure out why philosophically reincarnation cannot be true. But in addition to that, the philosophical side and the philosophical fallacies, there's also textually, we don't have text that supports such an idea of reincarnation, he says, which is very, very good. And I like the way he uses both the intellectual reasoning, philosophical reasoning, and textual, literal, or literature-related reasoning to disprove reincarnation. He had 3 philosophical reasons, or let's call rational reasons, for why reincarnation isn't true. But the only one that I really liked was the first one that he covered, which had to do with potentiality versus actuality, and how when something is actualized, when a potential is actualized, it cannot go back to potentiality again. And reincarnation necessitates that, and as a result, you can't believe in reincarnation being something that's going to actually happen. Anyway, that anyone who wishes can go back and listen to that. Alright, so to that session that we had last time. Article 110 also, he covers a couple of the things that, or beliefs that we find in Islam and the Shia school. So the first one is something that is accepted by all. Excuse me. As you can tell, my voice is a little coarse today. I'm coming down with something, so yeah, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not going to be jumping up and down and shouting as I usually do. So there's 2 beliefs that are out there. Number 1 is the belief of maskh and deformation, let's call it. And another one is the idea of raj'ah, and the returning of some of those who had passed away, some of the very righteous people who passed away, some of the very evil people who passed away. These are 2 beliefs in Islam. One of them has to do with all Muslims, which is maskh, that the Quran talks about, which talks about how certain people were changed to turn to monkeys and khanazir, pigs, as a punishment. I talked in depth about that last time. I'm not going to get into it again. But the question was that, okay, this might be like reincarnation. Their souls went into the body of a pig or a monkey. How is that not reincarnation? We talked about that, how it's not reincarnation. That's a belief that's held by all Muslims because it's in the Quran. But there's another belief that the Shia have. Not all schools of thought believe in this, and that is the concept of raj'ah. Mainstream Shiism today will believe in raj'ah, which is as I said, revival of certain of those who have deceased. This also, he proved how it's not, and Allama Tabatabai and others were quoted about how these are not examples for reincarnation. Alright, so that is articles 108 to 110. Now we're moving on to article 111 and today's topic, which has to do with Ashratu Sa'a. So we put behind us Barzakh, he didn't really get into it. And we got into reincarnation. Now we're talking about actual Day of Judgment and the arrival and coming of the Day of Judgment. There's this concept that we have even in the Quran, and that is the concept of Ashratu Sa'a, which refers to the signs of the coming of the Day of Judgment. So he talks about this here. He says, look, Ashratu Sa'a has two meanings. It can mean one of two things, and both are right. So there's two types of Ashratu Sa'a. Those signs that occur before the arrival of the Day of Judgment to signify that the Day of Judgment is arriving, number one. Then there's another category of signs and things that happen when the Day of Judgment has actually arrived and everything is getting messed up, and there is, let's say there's chaos in the cosmos and on earth and in the skies, in the heavens. So these are two categories of Ashratu Sa'a. So I want to read off of the book what he says in this regard. Article number 111. He says, in the discourse of the scholars based on the Quran, there is an issue known as, now he translates it as portents of the hour. Or let's just call it signs of the hour, which refers to the signs preceding resurrection. These signs are divided into two types. A, events which occur before the resurrection and the collapse of the created order, the natural order that is dominant over the universe. These events take place when people are still living on earth. The phrase Ashratu Sa'a refers in the main to this type of phenomenon. Okay, so when you look in the Quran, he's going to give examples. When it's talking about Ashratu Sa'a, it's usually talking about the things that happen before the Day of Judgment arrives that lead to, maybe we can call it the destruction of earth and the universe, maybe even. But before I go on, there's a lot to say here. Ulama and scholars have a lot to say in this regard. Is it really true that the whole of the universe is destroyed, the earth is destroyed, or is it something else? That we're just going to have to leave that for some other time. Or it's going to probably be covered in one of the courses that are to come, the Life After Death Part 2 course, which will cover this as well, which has to do with, will the skies and the heavens and the earth and the universe be destroyed or not really on the Day of Judgment? That's something to talk about later. Allama Tabatabai might beg to differ. Alright, anyway. The phrase Ashratu Sa'a refers in the main to this type of phenomenon, he says, the one that happens before the destruction of everything. B, events which are the cause of the collapse of the created order, most of which are mentioned in the following surahs: Surah Al-Takwir, Surah Infitar, Surah Inshiqaq, Surah Zilzal. So, if I'm to pull this up real quick, so for example, Surah Zilzal, or which one's the first one? Surah Takwir. Let me pull up Surah Takwir real quick, and you'll see what these verses are saying. Because if I leave it to you, the brothers and sisters probably won't get a chance to actually check these verses out. Surah Takwir. In the name of Allah, the All-Beneficent, the All-Merciful. When the sun is wound up, when the stars scatter, when the mountains are set moving, when the pregnant camels are neglected. Pregnant camels, they have to be attended to, taken care of, so that they deliver their offspring, because that itself is an asset. And so people back then, when a camel was pregnant, they would take care of it because it was carrying an asset. Now the Quran is trying to say that, look, people are so preoccupied with the day of judgment arriving that they neglect the pregnant camels. When the wild beasts are mustered, when the seas are set afire, when the souls are assorted, when the girl buried alive will be asked for what sin she was killed, when the scrolls of the scriptures are unrolled, when the sky is stripped off, when hell is set ablaze, when paradise is brought near, then a soul shall know what it has readied for itself. So these verses really send shivers down a person's spine. That's one. That's Surah Takwir. So this is these are excuse me. These are verses that have to do with, he says, these are verses that have to do with the signs of the actual, not signs, but the actual destruction of earth and the skies and everything. So he's giving these examples for the second category he was talking about. Or Surah Infitar, for example. Let me pull that up. These are all in the 30th part of the Quran, as a matter of fact. When the sky is rent apart, when the stars are scattered, when the seas are merged, when the graves are overturned, then a soul shall know what it has sent ahead and left behind. You see, it has the same pattern too. It gives you some of these things that are happening, some of these phenomena, and then in the end it says, then people will know what they've sent ahead for their afterlife. Man, this is scary stuff. I mean, so that's Surah Infitar. So those are like 4 or 5 verses that talk about those times. Surah Inshiqaq says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, when the sky is split open and gives ear to its Lord as it should, when the earth is spread out and throws out what is in it, emptying itself, that's an interesting line, and gives ear to its Lord as it should. O man, you are laboring toward your Lord laboriously, and you will encounter him. In other words, you're going to be your destination is Allah. Prepare for it. So once again, you see that same conclusion that Allah wants to draw from these verses. He's not just trying to scare us to get a scare out of us. He's worried for us. So the last surah he gives here example, which is one of the most famous ones for this, is Suratul Zilzal or Zalzala, which lots of kids usually have memorized. It's a short surah. It says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, when the earth is rocked with a terrible quake, and the earth discharges her burdens, with whatever it has in it, it just gives out. And man says, what is the matter with the earth? What's wrong with this? What's going on? On that day, the earth will relate her chronicles, for her Lord will have inspired her. On that day, mankind will issue forth, will come forward in various groups to be shown their deeds. Once again, see man, oh my God. It says deeds again. It says all of these things to end with this notion of, hey people, wake up, take care of your deeds. So whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it. SubhanAllah. And we seek refuge from Allah from that day and the things that are happening. So, just to go over this real quickly again, there's 2 categories of signs of things, phenomena that take place in the end of times. Some are preliminary to the actual destruction of earth and the skies and the universe. Some are what actually happens when the earth is being destroyed. Yeah. So these ones that I just read, these 4 surahs, these were examples he's giving for the second category, which are those signs, which are those things that happen upon destruction of earth and the skies and heavens and whatever. But do you have examples for the first category of Ashratu Sa'a, which aren't those things that are actually happening when everything's being destroyed, but no, they are signs that the day is getting closer and closer, and it's about to happen that everything's going to be destroyed? He says, I'll give you 5 examples. Number 1, the raising up of the last prophet. Interesting. See, brothers and sisters, when we sit here in the 21st century, we think that, okay, we are coming close to the end of times. The Prophet's time and the Imam's times were before the end of times, right? That's how we see it. That's how I would see it when I was a kid. Truth of the matter is, though, that no, our Prophet was raised and made Prophet in the end of times. We have hadiths that refer to the time of the Holy Prophet as the end of times. And that our Prophet is the Prophet of end of times. Yeah, and that kind of makes sense, because if we weren't the end of times, and we weren't all, the Prophet's time till today was not all considered one period or one era, which is considered end of times, then you would have to have another religion come after the Holy Prophet if our times are the end of times. I don't know, something to think about. I don't want to say that's necessarily set in stone, but it's something to think about. But it's interesting how the hadiths refer to our times as the same era as the era of the Holy Prophet. We are all the end of times. So the hadith says, for example, that the Holy Prophet said, بُعِثْتُ أَنَا وَالسَّاعَةِ كَهَاتَيْنِ وَضَمَّ السَّبَابَةَ وَالْوُسْطَى. That when the Prophet said, I was sent along with the hour, meaning the hour of the Day of Judgment, like these two. And then when he said these two, he was sticking his forefinger and his middle finger together, stuck together like this. That means I am myself a sign of the end of times. I am the sign of Day of Resurrection coming. So it's interesting how 1400 years in Allah's eyes is all like one day or something. It's the end of times, Him, the Holy Prophet, being sent is seen as a sign of Day of Resurrection being close. 1400 years have passed, Day of Resurrection hasn't come yet, but it's still considered a sign of it being close. So look at us thinking that, we have 50, 60 years, that's a lot of time, before we pass away or something. 1400 years is nothing in Allah's eyes. Okay. Or like in the Quran, we have a verse that I really like this one, which also gives the same notion across that, hey, don't think that, the Day of Resurrection is far away from you. It's already happening, right? The signs of it are already here. فَهَلْ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا السَّاعَةَ أَنْ تَأْتِيَهُمْ بَغْتَةً فهل ينظرون إلا الساعة أن تأتيهم بغتة فقد جاء أشراطها. Let me pull up the translation for this. I can translate. I want to see how they've translated it. Surah Muhammad, verse 18. It says, do they await anything except that the hour should overtake them suddenly? Yeah? Is that what they're waiting for? They think they're waiting for the hour to set in, the Day of Judgment to arrive suddenly, and they probably think it's far away. Nope. Certainly its portents have come. Its ashrat, its signs have come. The Quran has come, the Holy Prophet has come. These are signs of the Day of Resurrection coming. So don't think it's too far away. But 1400 years have passed, still hasn't come yet. In Allah's eyes, that it's close. Versus the times of Musa alayhi salam, Nuh, Adam, those are thousands of years away. But if this is the case, then we better be ready. Now, even if the Day of Resurrection doesn't come in our time, our death is gonna come for sure. So we have to be ready for all of this. Of what avail to them will their admonition be when it overtakes them, when that hour takes them, when the Day of Judgment arrives? Their admonition is not going to help them. So in other words, they got to fix their deeds, they got to fix their beliefs, these people who are mushrik during the Prophet's time. So this is something I really like. It's pretty cool for me that this Holy Prophet himself was a sign of Day of Resurrection being close. Number one. That's one example for the first category of Ashratus Sa'ah. Another example he gives for Ashratus Sa'ah is that the Quran has mentioned is the destruction of the dam of Gog and Magog, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. He says this is also a sign that the Quran has mentioned. Where has it mentioned it? Surah Kahf, verses number 98 and 99. They say, In the story of Gog and Magog, before I actually read the translation of 98 and 99, the story of Dhul Qarnayn is in the Quran, in Surah Kahf. It's there. Where a person by the name of Dhul Qarnayn, which means the possessor of two horns, which commentators of the Quran have really tried to figure out who it was, and they've tried to identify him with different people. But the Quran doesn't mention who he was. Was he a prophet? Was he not a prophet? Was he like a righteous general and commander? What was he? He goes to a people who are being oppressed by the Gog and Magog. And who those are, these were people who were, I don't want to get into it. It's a long story. Long story short, the Gog and Magog clans, tribes, whatever you want to call them, people, were oppressing these people. These people reached out to Dhul Qarnayn. They said, help us. They oppress us. They are corrupt. They're corrupting everything for us. And so he built a dam, but he made it in a special way. He used molten, I think, iron or copper, and he made this dam out of that. Now, this dam was very strong, and it was holding them back. Once again, how the story goes, we don't want to get into that right now. Through this dam, he was able to help the people that were being inflicted with all sorts of suffering and oppression by the Gog and Magog clans or people. Now, after this part of the story, and they thank him and everything, the Quran says, so the Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, they could neither scale it nor could they make a hole in it, in this dam that he had built. Pieces of iron and molten copper to pour over it. That's what he used to make it. Alright, so, but this is the point here. This is what we want to cover here is this. That when he said, Dhul Qarnayn, the possessor of two horns, said, this is a mercy from my Lord. If I built this, it's because of him. It's through him and his permission and power. But when the promise of my Lord is fulfilled, which is talking about the day of judgment, true that Gog and Magog couldn't breach this dam, but he will level it. Allah will demolish, destroy this dam. He will level it, and my Lord's promise is true. Okay, so one of the signs of the day of judgment coming, based on this, is that the dam of Gog and Magog will be destroyed. Now, there's a lot of discussion where this thing is located now. And Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, I did not look into Al-Mizan, I just looked at his tafsir, and he's described the different viewpoints in this regard, and he comes to a conclusion himself as well. So, but at the end of the day, it's not something that we know exactly where it is right now. So some might say that this is kind of not applicable right now. But he says in his tafsir that he comes to a conclusion that he knows where it is, and the details are there. Anyway, that's number 2. Number 3, Surah Dukhan verses 10 to 16. These are also signs of the day of judgment getting closer and closer, and then the whole of the universe or the whole of earth being destroyed and so on. Surah Dukhan verses 10 to 16. Let me just type it in. Verses 10 to 16 say, so watch out for the day when the sky brings on a manifest smoke, enveloping the people. They will cry out, this is a painful punishment. Our Lord, remove us from this punishment. Indeed, we have believed. What will the admonition avail them when a manifest apostle had already come to them? But they turned away from him and called him a tutored madman. Indeed, we will withdraw the punishment a little, but you will indeed revert to your earlier ways. The day we shall strike with the most terrible striking, we will indeed take vengeance on them. Yes, so these six verses talking about how when the day of judgment is getting closer, that a smoke will encompass the sky. Number 4, the coming of Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So this might be something that is also shared with the Christian faith as well, because they also believe in the coming of the Christ and the return of the Christ. Surah Zukhruf, verses 57 onwards, 57 to 61. He says, when the son of Mary was cited as an example, behold, your people raise an outcry. They say, are our gods better or he? They only cite him to you for the sake of contention. Rather, they are a contentious lot. All they want to do is argue. They're not after the truth. He was just a servant whom we had blessed and made an exemplar for the children of Israel. Had we wished, we would have set in your stead angels to be successors on the earth. Indeed, he is a portent and sign of the hour. So do not doubt it and follow me. This is a straight path. So the Holy Prophet is telling them that one of the signs of Day of Judgment coming and being close, and the destruction of heavens and earth being close, is the return of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. Excuse me. Number 5 talks about the emergence of a beast from the belly of the earth. Now, once again, here there's a discussion on what is exactly this beast. Although the verse says Dabba, this is Surah Naml, verse 82. The verse doesn't really elaborate. It just says Dabba, a Dabba, which means a moving thing, organism, which they might take as, now they've translated as a beast. I don't know, I don't know what a good equivalent for beast is. Let me see what the Ali Quri Qarai has used. See here, he says, we will bring out for them an animal from the earth. And when the word of judgment falls upon them, and the day of judgment is coming close, we shall bring out for them an animal from the earth who shall speak to them, that the people had no faith in our signs. So that's what the translations are saying. Dabba, though, it comes from the verb dabba yadubbu, I think, which means to move, something that moves. So it might be animal, but who knows? It might also be a human being, especially since it says that he will speak to them and say that the people had no faith and all that kind of stuff. So this is also something that we have to see what the Mufassirin have said. I didn't look this up, but I remember that one time coming across one of the things that Allama Tabatabai had said, that he believed, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure about this, but from what I remember is that he believed that this was a person actually. Because Dabba doesn't necessarily mean beast or animal. It can also mean a person, anything that's moving. Alright, so these are the 5 signs, he says, that fall under the first category of Ashratu Sa'a. Ashratu Sa'a meaning what? Meaning those signs that the day of resurrection is near, and that the destruction of earth and universe and heavens and the cosmos is going to happen, is very close. Alright, that's article number 111. In the end, though, of this article, he says something. He adds to these signs as well. I don't know, brothers and sisters, me personally, when I read these, I really relate to them. I feel like, you have this eagerness of these days, both seeing them, experiencing them, the power and might of Allah. But at the same time, you're worried that, hey, I might not be ready for that as well. As regards the signs of the second type, so I don't know why Ayatollah Subhani did this. He gave us the 2 categories of Ashratu Sa'a, gave examples for the second category, then went back to examples for the first category. Now he goes back to second category again with more examples. I don't know why he did it like that, but anyway. As regards the signs of the second type, the Quran speaks in detail of the transformation of the existential conditions of the universe, the collapse of the sun, the moon, the oceans, the mountains, the earth and the sky. In some spelled S-U-M here, like all in all, the existing order will be rolled up as a scroll, and a new order will arise, thus manifesting God's all-encompassing power, as it is said. Now you can see here, he is saying the order will be destroyed. This is very important. As I said in the beginning of our talk, just because the order changes doesn't mean it might necessarily mean that everything's destroyed. Yes, the Quran implies destruction. But as I said, some of these scholars have said, no, this is all metaphorical. And it won't be destroyed. As a matter of fact, other things are going to happen. A new order might come in place. Here also, Ayatul Subhani is kind of, I feel hinting at that. His teacher was Allama Tabatabai. One of his teachers were Allama Tabatabai. I think that he agrees with his teacher on this one. So, he says, look at this verse. On the day when the earth will be changed to other than the earth, and the heavens will also be changed, and they will come forth unto God, the one, the irresistible. Irresistible meaning you can't fight him, you can't resist against him. If he wants to do something, he'll get it done. It doesn't matter if you want it or not. So yeah, he uses this verse as well. He uses and cites this verse to show that a new order is going to come. Okay, once again, as I said, this is something to be covered much more in detail. Hopefully, we'll cover this in part 2 of Life After Death, the courses that we have, the crash courses that we offered in different places. That's the place to cover it in detail, inshallah. Alright, article number 112 talks about Nafkh as-Sur, also something we've covered in our course, in our Death, Barzakh and Resurrection course, in detail as well. Here, he talks about it, not too in detail, but he does explain a little bit, gives us an idea of how things work. When it comes to the Nafkh as-Sur. What is Nafkh as-Sur? Nafkh means to blow into something, and Sur means ram's horn, or trumpet, if you may, here. Because back then, if they wanted to have a trumpet, they would use a ram's horn for that purpose. The blowing in the trumpet. He says the Quran speaks about a phenomenon by the name of the blowing in the trumpet, which is going to take place it's going to take place twice. Let's read here. He says, the first blast of the trumpet or blowing in the trumpet causes the death of all living creatures in the heavens and the earth, except those for whom God wills otherwise, because that's what the verse exactly says. So that's one blowing in the trumpet. The second one is, the second blast or blowing in the trumpet will revive the dead and bring them all before God. So the first one takes all life, the second one brings them all back to life again. And then he cites the verse that talks about this. And the trumpet is blown, and all who are in the heavens and all who are in the earth die away, except him who God wills. Then it is blown a second time, and behold, look at them standing, waiting. The people are brought back to life, and they're waiting for their reckoning, their hisab, their judgment. The Quran specifically says in regard to the gathering and the resurrecting of mankind on the Day of Judgment, it says they come forth from the graves as though they were scattered locusts. If you ever seen these locusts, how they will come in clouds, let's call it, like millions of locusts attack crops and everything. They're all scattered and just eating away. The Quran, this is how it describes when the trumpet is blown into, just like these scattered locusts that come in big clouds and bunches and all over the place, that's how people will be resurrected. Subhanallah. We ask Allah to protect us on that day. So that's article 112. That's what we believe in when it comes to Nafkh as-Sur, he says. Finished. No details. As I said, there's a lot of details here that he skipped. Allama Tabatabai has covered. We've covered these in our course as well. I'm not trying to promote our course or anything. I'm just reminding those of you who have been in the course that we have covered these. So you can go back to your booklets and check that out if you need to be reminded. All right, Article 113 talks about other things now that happen on the Day of Judgment. Okay, so the trumpet has been blown in twice. People have come back to life. It is Judgment Day now. What is happening in Judgment Day? He talks about 4 or 5 things based on the Quran and Hadiths that happen on Judgment Day. And when we say Judgment Day, it doesn't necessarily mean a 24-hour period. It doesn't necessarily mean that the sun is up there. It doesn't mean any of these things. Day over there and day here have probably different concepts. We just refer to it as day because it is a container of time in which things take place. Yeah. So that's what it is. Okay. So he lists about 4 or 5 things here. He says, number 1, each person's reckoning will be conveyed in a particular way. One of these is the presentation to each of the record of his deeds. Surah Israel, Bani Israel, Surah Isra, verses 13 and 14 talk about this. And we've all heard this as kids growing up, going to Sunday school and all that, that a report card, if so to speak, will be given to each person. Number 2, what else happens? Apart from the recording of all deeds, small or great, being registered. Apart from the recording of all deeds, small or great, being registered in the account of each person, there will also be, on the day of resurrection, witnesses from within and outside of man. So 2 witnesses will be testifying. Some are within mankind and some are outside of mankind. That will testify to his actions on earth. The external witnesses consist of God, based on Surah Al-Imran, verse 98. The Prophet of each religious community, Surah Nahl, verse 89 says this. The Prophet of Islam, Surah Nisa, verse 41 says this. The foremost among the Islamic community, Surah Baqarah, verse 143 says this. God's angels, Surah Qaf, verse 18 says this. And the earth even, Surah Zilzal, verses 4 to 5. These are all witnesses that will testify and will bear witness on the day of judgment against mankind. And let God know that this is what mankind did. Now, let God know is very, very figurative speech here. Because Allah already knows. As a matter of fact, in part 2 of Life After Death and the course that we have, inshallah, Hisab and reckoning will also be covered. What it really is all about. Is it the case that reckoning and Hisab on the Day of Judgment means they're going to sit down and now they're going to calculate how many good deeds we have, how many bad deeds we have? Or does Allama Tabatabai have a deeper, more profound explanation of how Hisab is? Once again, hopefully that course will be ready someday. And that'll be discussed there. So these are external witnesses who are testifying against mankind. But there are also internal witnesses. It says the internal witnesses consist of the members and limbs of man. As we've all heard in, once again, Sunday school and the likes. Our parents have told us, we've heard from lectures, that yes, our body parts, our limbs will testify, our hands, our feet, and the embodied forms of his own acts. Another thing that will testify against us is our own actions will testify against us. They will be embodied and will take on a body and form and will testify against us. Subhanallah. What is the underlying common theme in all of this, brothers and sisters, as it's been being said again and again? It is our deeds and actions. If we can fix our deeds and actions, we don't have to worry about these things. But if we haven't taken care of those, then we're in trouble. No matter what else we've done in life, no matter how good we've been to people. If I haven't fixed the wajib and haram that Allah has told me to, all the other good things or bad things won't help me. If I have taken care of the wajib and haram of Allah, then all the other good things also that I do will help as well. So, long story short, brothers and sisters, good deeds, and it starts with wajib and haram. Alright, so that's number 2. Number 2 thing that happens on the Day of Judgment is that there will be as if a court in which people, external witnesses and internal witnesses will testify in. Number 3 thing that happens on the Day of Judgment. It says, in order to take account of the actions of human beings, in addition to what has been mentioned, there will be scales of justice set up. And each person, al-mawazin al-qist, the word is in Arabic, and each person will receive his exact due. And he cites the verse for that. وَنَضَعُ الْمَوَازِينَ الْقِسْطَ لِيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ فَلَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا وَإِنْ كَانَ مِثْقَالَ حَبَّةٍ مِنْ خَرْدَلٍ أَتَيْنَا بِهَا وَكَفَى بِنَا حَاسِبِينَ. which means, and we set up a just balance and scales on the day of resurrection so that no soul is wronged in anything. Though it be of the weight of a mustard seed, you will see it. Though it be of the weight of a mustard seed, we will bring it. And we suffice as reckoners. Hey, don't look around. If Allah is there, if the angels are there, that's enough to do the reckoning for us and to figure out where we belong, Jannah or Jahannam. We seek refuge in Allah. We seek refuge in Allah. Number four thing that happens on the Day of Judgment. It says, it is from our hadiths, we learn that there is this thing called the sirat, the pathway, the bridge, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what you call it. What it's all about is what matters. What is this sirat all about? Some of us have heard this as well in Sunday school and other places. It says, it is narrated in certain hadiths that there is a path that all must traverse on the day of resurrection. In these hadiths, this path is referred to as al-sirat. Quranic commentators have identified it with what is referred to implicitly in Surah Maryam verses 71 and 72. Let me read that for you real quick. It says implicitly, probably because the word sirat, I'm not sure, let me see, has been mentioned or not, I'm not sure. Let me pull it up. Yeah, it says, so it doesn't mention the word sirat, a pathway, but it does talk about how you will be crossing by Jahannam, all of you. Yes, everyone will pass by Jahannam. Well, where? How are they going to pass? Quranic commentators have explained that what is meant is that you'll pass over this bridge, and some will fall, some will not fall into Jahannam from it. And some hadith say that this, oh man, there's some beautiful stuff Allama Tabatabai says here. Once again, I'll leave that for part 2 of our course of life after death. Inshallah, one day we'll have that ready. But some hadiths tell us that it is thinner than a hair strand and sharper than a blade for some. And for others, man, it's like, for those of you from Dallas, it's like I-35. Well, who likes to drive on I-35? 635, let's talk about that. Or George Bush Highway, although the name doesn't do it justice. But anyway, it'll be like a highway for some people, and they will easily pass it without any problem. But Surah Maryam verses 71 and 72, he says, is alluding to that. What does it say? There is none of you but will come to Jahannam, and this is a matter that is a decided certainty with your Lord. All of you will come close to it. Then we will deliver those who are God-weary and leave the wrongdoers in it, in Jahannam, fallen on their knees. So everyone is going to pass by it over the sirat. Number 4. Number 5. Oh, there's like 7 here actually, he mentioned. I said 5. Yeah, there's 7. Number 5. Once I finish these 7, and then we'll end after these 7, inshallah. Number 5. Between those in heaven and hell there is a barrier which the Quran calls a hijab. And of course you all know hijab literally means barrier, right? On the day of resurrection, eminent individuals will be raised up to a high place from which they will see the inhabitants of heaven and hell by their respective marks. Each has their own mark. Oh my God, over here again, Allama Tabatabai has done wonders. It's beautiful. Once again, we'll leave that for the course. We can't cover it here. But yes, there will be heights, a'raf, that people will be standing on. As a matter of fact, Surah number 7 of the Holy Quran is named A'raf, Surah A'raf, because it talks about this concept. Yeah, it says they will stand up there. They can tell the inhabitants of hell and heaven by their marks, their signs. Each person, you can tell by looking at them if they're going to be in heaven or hell. And then so he cites the verse. It says, between them is a veil, and on the heights are men who know them all by their marks. These are some of the verses that I am in love with. Hopefully one day we can cover these. So that's another thing that's happening on Day of Judgment, the hijab. These eminent souls, according to hadiths, are the prophets and their noble successors. Number 6 thing that happens, he brings here, which is interesting, I hadn't come across this myself before, is the Liwa'ul Hamd, it's called. Liwa'ul Hamd, banner of praise. It's translated here. What happens? When the rendering of account has been completed, everyone has been judged on Judgment Day, and the fate of souls is now known, God hands to the Prophet ﷺ a flag called Liwa al-Hamd. So he's holding a flag as if, which is the flag of praise of God, as if. And he then leads to heaven those destined for it. It's as if like the Prophet falls ahead with this flag, and he takes with him all those who are destined for Jannah. Inshallah, we're one of those people. And finally, in numerous hadiths, mention is made of the pool of Al-Kawthar, present in the domain where the resurrection takes place. The Prophet comes before all others to this pool, and then those in the community who are saved drink at the pool through the mediation of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt. Okay, so these are some of the things. As I've said again and again, he keeps things very concise. There's a lot to talk about. Just this one article can be a course itself. But yeah, these are some of the things that happen on the Day of Judgment in a nutshell. Some of the more prominent things that you'll have verses for, hadiths for, many hadiths for. After this, he moves on into shafa'ah. One of those things that happens on the Day of Judgment is shafa'ah, intercession. But he opens up a whole little kind of chapter or article separately and dedicates one to it separately. Although this could have also been one of those things that happens on the Day of Judgment. It could have been the 8th thing on this list, but he isolates it and he wants to talk about it more, especially because now this is the part where certain schools of thought, not all of them, certain non-Shia schools of thought, which are a minority, he says, don't agree with these matters, or certain aspects of these matters. Everyone believes in Shafa'ah, but certain aspects of it he wants to discuss later. So he's kind of opening up a little mini chapter, if you may, for this. And so we'll get into that, inshallah, next week. As I've said again and again, you can follow and listen to these sessions on podcasts. I think that's a very convenient way. And inshallah, we're going to update those, and there will be more things that we want to add as well. There are other sessions and classes that we do, even locally here in the Mizan headquarters that we have in Dallas. Those will even be uploaded, such as the Akhlaq class that we have, Stages of Akhlaq, Vaitul Jawadi Amali, and other things as well. We're hoping to, inshallah, upload those as well. A lot of people are asking for that. There will be links and posters for that, inshallah, when the time comes as well, for people to know where to get that as well. So till next week, inshallah, keep us in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa